morning, everyone. Those who are joining on Zoom and those who are joining by YouTube. Welcome to this Sunday program of the Universalist Unitarian Church of Halifax on this last Sunday in May. This month we've been focusing on the theme of story, and today's service will be about the importance of not only listening to stories, but being brave enough to change the stories that we're told. My name is Norm Horofker, and I'm proud to say that I'm the minister of this congregation, established in Halifax in 1837. Finally, on Friday, I suffered a back spasm that has kept me from moving around freely, but I managed to get in this morning. Jessica Friesen is our music director. Marie-Claude Leroux is our director of religious exploration. And John Piccolo is our volunteer director and technician this morning. And Marie Welton is our service assistant. Thank you all. During the service today, the chat function will be open as usual, and I invite you to extend our hospitality by saying hello to anyone that you don't recognize or by leaving a message for us. Pam Berman and I were talking at the membership committee about how we used to have greeters at the door when people came in that would say hello, and we haven't done that in the digital age. I think we need to get some digital greeters, so if you'd like to take that role on, today's your chance. If you're not already receiving notifications from our church and you would like to receive updates, we have a listserv. You'd get a couple of notices every week, just official business from the church. If you'd like to be on that list, please send your email to minister@uuch.ca. Before we start, we have a few announcements. The order of service was sent out last evening, and it contains more details on each of the following. The first one is a big announcement. Next Sunday, we're having Peter Mayer as our featured, I want to say performer, but featured service presenter. Peter is an amazing musician, a craftsman of music and word and lyric. Written, I think they said 11 different albums published, a few great songs that Unitarian Universalists love to sing, like Blue Boat Home. So he will be our featured, he'll be featured in the service next Sunday, and we're calling next Sunday Bring a Friend Sunday. We would really like you to invite someone you know to attend this service online and get a sampling for what a Unitarian Universalist service can be like. And then on the following Saturday, we're having a Soulful Sundown service on Saturday, June the 12th, again with Peter Mayer. So the Sunday service is going to be more of a spiritual service, and the Saturday service will also be spiritual, but it'll be a little more laid back, a little more like a coffee house. And if you watch Peter on Sunday, I know you're going to want to come back on Saturday. So watch for those. There'll be announcements going out on UU Info. And please remember, it's Bring a Friend Sunday. We'd like to double the number of people that we normally have online on that Sunday. We continue with our COVID busting social call on Thursdays. If you'd like to break out of isolation, there are details for how to join that call every Thursday evening at 7 p.m. This week, there are 2 team meetings coming up. The Religious Exploration Team for Children and Youth meets on Wednesday, the first Wednesday of each month, at 7:30 p.m., led by Marie-Claude Leroux. And our Truth, Healing, and Reconciliation Team meets this Friday, the first Friday of each month, at 3 p.m., led by Witzka Gradstein. Important notice about our annual meeting. We've moved it from the end of May till the end of June, hoping that more people will be able to attend in person, and we can have people in person and online so that no one feels excluded from the annual meeting. And now, Jessica has our prelude, A Story of Optimism.
So I will be playing 1939's The Wizard of Oz Over the Rainbow. And it is an arrangement by George Shearing, originally written by Harold Arlen.
Thank you, Jessica. I just realized that I missed an announcement and that the newsletter for the month of June is out, thanks to our newsletter editor, Etta Ham. Thank you for that. So it's gone out electronically on UU Info. Another good reason to sign up to UU Info. And I know Etta mails out some hard copies as well. And now, Marie Weldon has a message of gratitude from our board. Over to you, Marie.
Good morning. Here we are again, staying the blazes home, and yet we have much to be grateful for. Many of us have received our first vaccinations, and our third wave is already receding. Summer is almost here and promising to be nearly normal. Lots to be grateful for. And we are grateful for this congregation, which continues to think of others, even during this difficult time. Your pledges of funding our programs and staff salaries, and your unpledged donations have kept our Saturday brunch and food box programs going. In fact, the minister's discretionary fund, which fills the food box, is ample at this time. If you are relatively new here and would like to contribute to the church's operating costs or the Saturday brunch, that would be great. If you are Old Faithful, a donation is always appreciated. Either can be done by e-transfer to treasurer@uuch.ca or by check mailed to the church address, which is on the slide. Thank you.
This morning, something different for our chalice lighting. If you tuned into the Canadian Unitarian Council's service during the annual conference, you'll have seen a video called Keep It Alight, featuring my colleague, Reverend Lynn Harrison of Toronto. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did. And the people in the video are from UU congregations across Canada. And after the video, I'll light the chalice here in our sanctuary.
There are days when you're tending the embers, when the flame flickers down to a spark, when the shadows grow long in your wilderness, when it's hard to be strong, just remember this. Keep it alive, keep it alive, the light of love that shines inside you. Keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive. Oh, keep it alive, keep it alive. Keep it alive, keep it alive. There's a flame that sustains love and justice. Everyone holds it here in the heart. It can carry us through from birth till death. It's kindled anew with every breath. Keep it alive, keep it alive, the light of love that shines inside you. Keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, keep it alive. The light of love, the warmth of kindness, the blaze of courage, the spark of joy, it's all within us. Keep it alive, keep it alive, the light of love that shines inside you. Keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive. The light of love that shines inside you. Keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, keep it alive, keep it alive, burning and bright. Keep it alive, 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 keep it alive. Keep it alive. Keep it alive.
There we go, folks. Thank you for keeping it alight. Now it's time in our service when we acknowledge that we're on unceded Mi'kmaq territory and that we're all treaty people and responsible for the stewardship of this land. This morning, Brian Gifford will speak to us on that point.
This Tuesday, June 1st, may be an important day in the evolution of Mi'kmaq fishing rights. Zibanekity First Nation intended to restart its treaty-based moderate livelihood fishery on that day, and the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans, Bernadette Jordan, said her department would not allow it, setting up the potential for a different kind of confrontation compared to what happened last fall in and around Sonyaville between Digby and Yarmouth. This time, the Coast Guard and Department of Fisheries and Oceans, or DFO, staff arresting Mi'kmaq fishers and confiscating traps and other property. Sipinekity First Nation has decided to begin a much smaller food, social, and ceremonial fishery instead of a moderate livelihood fishery because its members do not want to experience the kind of threats and damages they faced last fall. But they still intend to sell some of their catch, which GFO and the province say they cannot do. So the potential for confrontation remains. Given the limitations created by the pandemic, people in various faith communities have decided to offer prayers or other forms of hopeful expression at their own services this weekend, expressing two sentiments. May there be no violence on June 1st, and we ask our government to honor the rights of Mi'kmaq fishers. This decentralized form of solidarity with the Mi'kmaq fishers will become public through social media using the hashtag praying for peace and friendship, and possibly through the mainstream media. We are working on this with partners in other faiths and in social justice organizations through a new group called the Interfaith Coalition for Treaty Rights. We believe a solution that supports both Indigenous and non-Indigenous fishers in their communities is possible, but at this point, it seems a long way off. The coalition sent a letter to the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations, Carolyn Bennett, and the Minister of Indigenous Services, Mark Miller, calling for nation-to-nation talks to solve this. This is a rapidly evolving, difficult situation that will test all of us in our efforts to genuinely create a better relationship with Mi'kmaq people. If anyone would like further information about this evolving situation, you can talk to me or Vitska or Norm. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And now Eleanor Reynolds, a member of our climate crisis team, would like to share some good news, I believe.
Well, good morning. I'm a member of the Unitarian Universalist climate crisis team. We meet once a month over Zoom, of course, and we're young and old. And our focus at the moment is energy, fossil fuels. Last week, Royal Dutch Shell, an Anglo-Dutch oil company, was ordered by the Hague District Court to cut its carbon emissions by net 45% by 2030, compared to 2019 levels, almost half of 2019 levels. This is a landmark decision. Last week, the shareholders of ExxonMobil, a multinational oil company, voted 2 independent directors to their company's board. This is interpreted as a sign shareholders are unhappy with the way that ExxonMobil has been addressing climate change and lagging financial preference. Large oil companies like ExxonMobil realize that they must be part of decarbonizing the economy. These oil companies are being forced now by courts and shareholders. So there's a hope the fossil fuel industry will have more will move towards a green future. Elizabeth Hayhoe, who's a Canadian scientist working in Texas, said in a TED Talk recently, asked about what can we do? And she said about climate crisis, talk about it. Talk about it. Simple. And think about it. And all of us can do our part. And my radio says, stay tuned. Thank you.
Thank you, Eleanor. And now our opening hymn. Jessica?
Good morning, everyone. Our opening hymn is Guide My Feet, number 348. The spiritual is from a collection of Willis Lawrence James's work. So sing with me.
Thank you, Jessica. Our service this morning is about changing the narrative. And Marie-Claude has a children's story that speaks to that exactly. Marie-Claude?
Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be reading one of my favorite childhood stories that whimsically turns traditional fairy tales on their heads and changes the common narrative about gender roles, identity, and even what it means to be happy. This is The Paper Bag Princess by Robert Munsch. Elizabeth was a beautiful princess. She lived in a castle and had expensive clothes. She was going to marry a prince named Ronald. Unfortunately, a dragon smashed her castle, burnt all her clothes with his fiery breath, and carried off Prince Ronald. Elizabeth decided to chase the dragon and get Ronald back. She looked everywhere for something to wear, but the only thing she could find that was not burnt was a paper bag. So she put on the paper bag and followed the dragon. He was easy to follow because he left a trail of burnt forests and horses' bones. Finally, Elizabeth came with a large door that had a huge knocker on it. She took hold of the knocker and banged on the door. The dragon stuck his nose out of the door and said, "Well, a princess. I love to eat princesses, but I've already eaten a whole castle today. I'm a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." He slammed the door so fast that Elizabeth almost got her nose caught. She grabbed the knocker and banged on the door again. The dragon snuck his nose out of the door and said, "Go away. I love to eat princesses, but I have already eaten a whole castle today. I'm a very busy dragon. Come back tomorrow." "Wait," shouted Elizabeth. "Is it true that you're the smartest and fiercest dragon in the whole world?" "Of course," said the dragon. "Is it true," said Elizabeth, "that you can burn up to 10 forests with your fiery breath?" "Oh, yes," said the dragon. And to prove his point, he took a huge deep breath and breathed out so much fire that he burnt up 50 forests. "Fantastic," said Elizabeth. And the dragon took another huge breath and breathed out so much fire that he burnt up 100 forests. "Magnificent," said Elizabeth. And the dragon took another huge breath, but this time nothing came out. The dragon didn't even have enough fire left to cook a meatball. Elizabeth said, "Dragon, is it true that you can fly around the world in just 10 seconds?" "Why, yes," said the dragon, and jumped up and flew all the way around the world in just 10 seconds. He was very tired when he got back, but Elizabeth shouted, "Fantastic, do it again." So the dragon jumped up, flew around the world in just 20 seconds. When he got back, he was too tired to talk. He lay down and went straight to sleep. Elizabeth whispered very softly, "Hey, dragon." The dragon didn't move at all. She lifted up the dragon's ear and put her head right inside. She shouted as loud as she could, "Hey, dragon!" The dragon was so tired he didn't even move. Elizabeth walked right over the dragon and opened the door to the cave. There was Prince Ronald. He looked at her and said, "Elizabeth, you are a mess. You smell like ashes, your hair is all tangled, and you're wearing a dirty old paper bag. Come back when you're dressed like a real princess." "Ronald," said Elizabeth, "your clothes are really pretty, and your hair is very neat. You look like a real prince, but you are a bum." They didn't get married after all. I hope you enjoy this story as much as I always do. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie-Claude. I think that's one of everyone's favorite stories. A narrative with a difference. Jessica will assist now as we take this special time to reflect on our joys and sorrows. A sacred time in our service, a time that we set apart to honor the many joys and the many sorrows that you, the congregation, are living, and to acknowledge the mutual support of this beloved community. This morning, I'll ask Jessica to light one candle for all those who are here with us or in our thoughts, struggling mentally, physically, financially, or emotionally. And we'll light a second candle for all the joys that are in the room. With you, the big joys that come along only infrequently, and the little joys that we are blessed with every day, if we're but able to see them. And Jessica will light a candle again for all the members and friends of our community who are shut in one way or another by this pandemic. I want to light a special candle, if you don't mind, for Marie Davis, who is in that group. Marie is at Northwood, and she is really longing for a time when she can see her friends in person here in the sanctuary. And then another candle for all of us suffering from COVID-19 fatigue. May this be the last lockdown. Each week, I invite anyone with a joy or a sorrow to share at this time to relay their thoughts to me by email. This morning, I'd like to light a candle for the Mi'kmaq fishers and all those who are involved in that dispute. May there be peace on the wharfs and on the waters. This morning, we'll also light a candle for Mike Belland. Some good news. After a very serious battle with infection, confined to intensive care in the infirmary, Mike is finally in a regular hospital room and is expected to go home this week. He's still in for a long period of recovery, but we're all greatly relieved that he's out of danger. And this morning, we'll light a candle for Scott Wood. Scott's going into hospital for eye surgery on Wednesday this week. We'll all be thinking of you, Scott, and wishing you a very speedy recovery. Later, when we stop the live streaming on YouTube and before the coffee hour begins, I'll invite anyone else to share a joy or a sorrow and have a candle lit if they would like to do so. And now, Jessica will present a reflective hymn.
Return again, return again, return to the home of your soul. Return again, return to the home of your soul. Return to who you are. Return to what you are. Return to where you are. Born and reborn again. Sing with me. Return again. Return again, return to the home of your soul.
May the joys and sorrows, both those acknowledged here this morning and those held in the silent sanctuary of our hearts, weave us together in the interdependent fabric that is our community. And now, Marie has a reading for us to set the stage for my reflection. Marie.
Today's reading is from a book called Dreams of the Compass Rose by Vera Nazarian. Compass rose is a figure on a compass or a map to show the directions north, south, east, and west, and points in between. I'll tell you the true purpose of fleas, but only if you promise to keep it a great secret and tell no one else. Fleas are a mixed blessing, little goslings. They were given to us so that we could scratch ourselves like monkeys and amuse the gods as we pick the little monsters off each other. And in the process, as we make the gods laugh, we also go closer to one another in friendship. That is the one thing the wicked, puny God never had in mind when he created fleas. But why is such a great secret? Why is this such a great secret? Asked another child. Why can't we tell grandmother? Well, you could, but you might not want to. At least, not until you thought about it long enough, said Annalete. You see, all stories have a curious and even a dangerous power. They are manifestations of truth, yours and mine. And truth is all at once the most wonderful yet terrifying thing in the world, which makes it nearly impossible to handle. It is such a great responsibility that it's best not to tell a story unless you know you can do it right. You must be very careful, or without knowing it, you can change the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie. I never read the novel by Vera Nazarian, from which that reading was selected, but I think it makes an interesting introduction to a reflection on changing the narrative. The story encourages us to see fleas, those little monsters, as she called them, in a different way. An affliction from the gods, for sure, but also a vehicle that draws people together, getting in close contact, caring for one another. And I know there would be easier places to start a story than to try and convince your grandmother about the benefits of fleas. It's better not to tell a story at all unless you're really prepared and can do it right. Stories, when carefully crafted, have curious, even dangerous powers. We accept stories often without thinking. We absorb them, and they become part of our reality. Uri Hassan, professor of psychology and neuroscience at Princeton University, tells us that as you hear an engaging story unfold, your brain waves start to synchronize with those of the storyteller. Do you feel your brain waves synchronizing with mine this morning? I probably still have work to do in that technique. But stories can and do change us. And in the process, they change the world. And so they deserve careful attention. The title for my reflection today is Changing the Narrative. And I've been thinking of those simple words, change the narrative, ever since I heard Brian Stevenson speak at the General Assembly of the Unitarian Universalist Association in New Orleans in 2017. Brian Stevenson is a much honored American lawyer, social justice activist, founder and executive director of Equal Justice Initiative, and a law professor at New York University School of Law. He's based in Montgomery, Alabama, and Stevenson has challenged bias against the poor and the minorities in the criminal justice system, especially children. He's helped to achieve United States Supreme Court decisions that prohibit sentencing children under 18 to death or to life imprisonment without parole. Stevenson has assisted in cases that have saved dozens of prisoners from the death penalty. I'm not here this morning to tell the story of Brian Stevenson, as powerful as that is. but to relate something inspired by his work. Stevenson is a compelling public speaker. His talks often focus on his advice to those who want to make a difference in the world, those who want to change the world. He summarizes that advice with 4 instructions. First, get proximate. You have to get close to the people that you're trying to help. 2, stay hopeful despite the setbacks. 3, learn to be uncomfortable, to take risks. And 4, change the narrative. This morning, I want to elaborate on that 4th piece of advice, change the narrative. Narrative is the underlying story that is accepted as the way the world works, and that becomes the foundation for the social conventions that are built upon it. As Vera Nazarian said, narratives have a curious, even dangerous power. They're manifestations of truth, yours and mine, and tell us all at once the most wonderful yet terrifying thing in the world. For much of Stevenson's work, the narrative that he works to change is the story that the evil underlying U.S. race relations is the legacy of slavery. And since slavery is no more, we can move on. For Stevenson, the evil underlying race relations is not the history of slavery. It's instead the narrative that one group of people are inferior to another. Ending slavery didn't end that narrative, and changing that narrative is what we need now. We're living in a time of great change. One of the things that is changing the fastest is the stories that we use to describe our truths. Previous generations lived their entire lives with one set of fixed narratives, built around religions, social customs, and accepted norms and political systems. My parents voted for the same political party their entire life. As it happens, different political parties, they took great pleasure in canceling each other's vote every election. In my father's generation, I learned that Chevrolets were better than Fords. And my dad never owned anything but a Chevrolet. My proposition this morning is that changing the narrative is essential and is good, but the process must be intentional. We need to be changed, and what appears to be changing is a whole lot of unmotivated, wrong-headed, harmful narratives. The lens of seeing social change as a narrative change gives me hope and provides a vehicle to advance the work of social justice. Our Truth, Healing, and Reconciliation team at the congregation here has been an eye-opener for me. The narratives describing the rights of the Indigenous people of Canada are changing. The narrative describing the history of white settlers and Indigenous peoples is changing. The title of Daniel Paul's book, We Were Not the Savages, is a bold step in changing that narrative. The narrative of residential schools has changed forever our understanding. The narrative of Cornwallis and John A. Macdonald is changing irrevocably. These are undeniable shifts in our story as Canadians. It seems that the pace of the change of narrative starts off slowly and grows until it reaches a tipping point and then becomes conventional wisdom, almost overnight. Narratives are curious things. You don't have to know the details of the story to be steeped in the narrative. The narrative, as they say, is the water that we swim in. It's the underlying justification for our actions, even when we don't consciously realize it. And so it is with our own faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism. The dominant narrative has been that we're a faith tradition that owed not only its past, but ironically its future, to the European Enlightenment of the 16th century. Dominant white culture shaped the way we gathered to worship, selected the sources, the books, and the authors that we referred to most frequently, determined the hymns that we would sing, governed the manner in which we conducted our meetings. We were, and we still are, clearly a white European-centered religion. But that's in conflict with our theology, a theology that welcomes people of all faiths or none, a theology that encourages and celebrates diversity. Our theology is never was about being with like-minded people, being comfortable. Our theology challenges us to listen to people with different perspectives and to celebrate the diversity of humankind. The narrative describing Unitarian Universalism is changing. We are on the road to dismantling the dominant white culture, the white supremacy culture that has defined us as a faith tradition. Truth is at once the most wonderful and the most terrifying thing in the world, which makes it nearly impossible to handle. Vera Nazarian went on to write, "It is best not to tell the story unless you know that you can do it right." And I don't know if I can tell the story right yet. The story of our emergence as a truly loving, multicultural, diverse faith tradition. But I do know that our story, our narrative, needs to change. If we're going to face and if we're going to be a force for positive change in the world. Jessica has selected the perfect piece for a reflection before my concluding remarks.
So I have chosen John Lennon's Imagine. A lot of you probably know this song, so please sing along if you know it. Imagine there's no heaven. It's easy if you try. No hell below
You, the members and friends of this congregation, will be asked in the months ahead to consider the narrative describing our faith tradition. That process will culminate in a national meeting in November. Are we becoming a truly diverse, multicultural faith? Or are we remaining a white-centered faith tradition that dabbles on the edges of racial justice? Please watch for information that will be coming from the CUC in June and find a way to get engaged. We can change the world if one, we get proximate and develop meaningful relationships across cultural divides. Two, if we stay hopeful despite the setbacks. Three, if we're willing to get uncomfortable and to take risks. And four, if we're willing to change the narrative. Let's choose to be careful with the stories that we tell about ourselves. It's a great responsibility. It can change the world. In the name of all that is sacred within us and among us today, may it be so. And now, over to Jessica to lead us in our closing hymn, reminding us that changing the narrative can turn the world around.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life. Oh, but you are. So is life. Oh, so is life. Oh, but you are. So is life. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only can the Spirit turn the world around. Oh, so is life, but you are. So is life. Come on. Oh, so is life, but you are. So is life.
Thank you, Jessica. It's been said that the most powerful words ever spoken are, "Tell me a story." Let us tell stories, powerful stories, stories that affirm our principles as Unitarian Universalists. Let's take care in the stories we tell. Let us tell stories of love and healing and compassion. And when we hear stories that debase and cause conflict, let us be brave enough to change the narrative. May it be so. Thank you all who attended the service today by Zoom or by YouTube. I'll be saying goodbye to those now who joined by YouTube as we end our live streaming. For those who joined by Zoom, in a few moments, you will return to sharing joys and sorrows. If you would like a candle lit or you would like to acknowledge a joy or a sorrow in your life. And that will be followed by our virtual coffee hour. Thank you again. I hope you all have a wonderful day.